Welcome to First Parish in Needham, a Universalist Unitarian congregation founded in 1711, along with the town of Needham. We are a proud LGBTQ welcoming congregation, climate justice seeking green sanctuary, and level 2 sanctuary supporting congregation for immigrant justice. Whoever you are, whatever your background, wherever you're participating from, you're welcome here. I am Elliot Jakowski, president of the congregation. My wife, Lynn, and I have been members of First Parish for 8 years. We've developed many wonderful relationships and consider First Parish our spiritual home. As you know, after gathering virtually since the beginning of the pandemic, our congregation is beginning to gather for Sunday services and programming in a hybrid, multi-platform format. This Sunday, we are doing a test run of our worship volunteers, and if all goes well with the test run, we will be fully hybrid starting Sunday, October 31st. That's next Sunday. Although our buildings remain under restrictions due to the COVID pandemic, our faith community welcomes every person and family. We hope all of you will plug into our Zoom gathering opportunities throughout the week, including Zoom social hour after every Sunday service. Those who have registered for a seat at Sunday services and have agreed to follow our COVID-19 precautions, such as proper mask wearing of a surgical or N95 equivalent mask over your mouth and nose, and only congregating in our ventilated sanctuary and parish hall, you are welcome to join a brief in-person social hour in our parish hall after the postlude. Thanks to the outstanding work of the Reopening Task Force, using a scientific, evidence-based approach, we are able to create an in-person worship experience that is low risk. The critical elements of in-person gathering at low risk are quality masks, proper mask wearing, and adequate ventilation. Our building's capacity for ventilation necessarily limits the number of people that can safely be accommodated in the sanctuary and the parish hall. To avoid having to turn away people when capacity limits are reached, we are creating a reservation system using Eventbrite. A link to a short video demonstrating how to make a reservation will be in the bell notes, although folks who have tested it out say that it's quite straightforward. You can learn more about what's happening at First Parish by going to our website, uuneedham.org, or by following us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. To get Zoom links, learn about our outdoor and hybrid religious exploration, and register for an in-person seat at an upcoming Sunday service, please sign up for our weekly email newsletter by going to our website and clicking Get Involved Newsletter, or sending your request to office@uuneedham.org. Our sincere hope is that these online, hybrid, and outdoor services and connection opportunities will help us keep the public health precautions required during this pandemic without losing much of the spiritual, emotional, and social closeness that we treasure in our faith community. As Unitarian Universalists, we also have an ethical commitment to serving the most vulnerable, which will guide our ongoing work to continue to deliver excellent online programs to complement our in-person ones. If you're watching this service as it live streams, please take a moment now to say hello and introduce yourself in the chat box. Welcome again to everybody, and good morning.
As we light our chalice, symbol of our faith, both here in the meeting house and in the worship cafe, we read words from modern Euro-American Unitarian Universalist minister, Reverend Kathleen McTeague. You are also welcome to light a chalice in your homes. In the struggles we choose for ourselves, in the ways we move forward in our lives and bring our world forward with us, It is right to remember the names of those who gave us strength in this choice of living. It is right to name the power of hard lives well lived. We share a history with those lives. We belong to the same motion. They too were strengthened by what had gone before. They too were drawn out by the vision of what might come to be. Those who lived before us, who struggled for justice and suffered injustice before us, have not melted into dust and have not disappeared. They are with us still. The lives they lived hold us steady. Their words remind us and call us back to ourselves. Their courage and love evoke our own. We, the living, carry them with us. We are their voices, their hands, and their hearts. We take their flame with us, and with them choose the deeper path of living. Our opening hymn, Come and Go With Me, comes from the African American slave spiritual tradition. From home, please pull up the lyrics from yesterday's Sunday service bell notes. From the sanctuary and parish hall, you can find the hymn at number 1018 in your teal hymnals or in your printed orders of service. Please join in singing from home and humming along in the sanctuary and parish hall, Come and Go With Me.
Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound, where I'm bound. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land where I'm bound, where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land where I'm bound. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land where I'm bound, where I'm bound. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land where I'm bound. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land where I'm bound, where I'm bound. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land where I'm bound.
I invite you all now to recite the covenant with me. Together, we gather as a loving community to encourage and comfort one another. We gather as a diverse community to support each other in our search for spiritual truth. We gather as a service community to live our beliefs through action and care for our world.
Hello, everyone. As I'm sure many of you have learned, First Parish in Needham, in addition to continuing to live stream our Sunday worship services, is also going to begin resuming in-person worship. It is important to acknowledge that, yes, The COVID-19 pandemic is still here and something that we're living through. There are many people who may not feel comfortable returning to in-person services just yet, and that is okay. Our families, along with our doctors, have to make health decisions that are right for them. But for those of us who are coming back into the physical church building, it is very important that we do what we can to care for ourselves and for each other. A big way to do that is, if you haven't already, talk to your doctor about getting vaccinated. But unfortunately, there are some people that cannot get vaccinated, such as people right now who are age 12 and under. And there are others who, even though they may be vaccinated, have health issues that may make them immunocompromised, meaning their body has a harder time protecting them against infection, and that the vaccine is not as effective for them as it may be for others. Because of these issues and others, it is especially important that we continue to wear our masks and wear them properly. Masks are our biggest tool in keeping in-person worship less risky for those who do come. Every person in our church building is going to need to stay masked for the entire time that they're here. But we also know that there are certain things that make our masks much more effective or helpful. So why don't we review some of that? First, for us here at First Parish, we are going to ask that people wear surgical masks instead of cloth masks. If you don't have a surgical mask, that's okay. We'll have them here for you to use. Also, if you have an N95, a K95, or a similar level mask, then those are acceptable as well. Let's go over proper wearing of a surgical mask to make sure we are keeping these as effective as possible. First, we want to make sure that we have the mask right side up. Feel along the long edges, and you should find one of them has a sort of bendy wire or metal piece. This is the top of the mask that goes on the bridge of your nose. Next, we want to figure out which side of the mask faces outward and which faces inward, towards our mouth. On many surgical masks, the outside facing part is blue or another color, while the inside is white, but this is not always true. So an easy way to check is to look at the pleats on the mask. The outside of the mask will have pleats that face down, and the inside of the mask will have pleats that face up. Now, before you put on your mask, make sure your hands are washed or use hand sanitizer. Then, put on your mask over each ear with the ear loops. But you are not done yet. If you leave it like this, the mask is not sealed around your face and may let aerosolized particles out into the air. To fit it to your face, first pinch the bendable section up here to fit tightly to the bridge of your nose. Then you're going to take your fingers and draw them from either side of your nose, outwards towards your ears along the tops of your cheeks, pressing the top edge of the mask against your face. While holding the top of the mask to your nose, pull the bottom of your mask down over the bottom of your chin. Make sure you don't have any big gaps on the sides of your mask. If you do, it might mean that either your mask isn't adjusted to your face or that the ear loops are a little too long. An easy way to make a mask fit better is to take the ear loop on each side and twist them once or maybe even twice before putting them on over your ears. After you have completely left the church building and it is time to take your mask off, instead of touching the front of your mask, to remove it, you're just going to put your fingers into the loops around your ears, remove your mask, throw it away, and then wash or sanitize your hands. As I'm sure many of you have seen, there are many ways to wear a face mask that are not as effective. My friend Goose here is going to show us some examples. We do not want to wear our mask, for example, hanging from one ear like an earring. We also don't want to wear it below our nose, allowing our breath to escape into the air from our nostrils. And we also don't want to wear our mask around our neck like a scarf. We also shouldn't wear our masks on our heads like hats, over our eyes, and they are not approved for internal use. Our masks are at their best when they are worn properly, over our nose, below our chin, and fitted snugly to our faces. Also, while you're at church, you might find that you need a break from your mask, and that is okay. You can get up at any time, go outside for a chance to remove your mask, and maybe take a minute or two to breathe, or just recenter yourself in a way that feels comfortable. Just remember not to take your mask off until you've completely left the building, and also to properly refit it completely before coming back in. Also, if you're one of the younger members of our congregation, please let your parent or adult know before you leave. I am so excited to see many of your faces in service soon. And also I'm excited to keep connecting with others of you on Zoom. We all have to make the decisions that are right for us and our health. And I love being a part of a community that so deeply cares about doing what each of us can to listen to science, to follow protocols and policies, and to make our time together more fruitful and less risky. Please take care of yourselves, and I hope to see you all in one way or another with smiling eyes, potentially above a properly fitted mask, very soon.
We might need to have those microphones off while this is on. We might need to have those microphones off while this is on.
We haven't had this many microphones on in a long, long time. And the volume still seems to be on in the sanctuary.
How did you do that? This is the time during our worship service when we share the joys and concerns that are very close to our hearts and lives. Folks watching online or in the parish hall have submitted candles to me at internminister@uuneedham.org by the Thursday before the service at midnight, which I will read at the very end of the ritual. If you are in the parish hall and have a joy or concern, all are welcome to quietly offer a stone and write your candle on a slip of paper, which the pastoral care team and the ministers will see at a later time with your permission. If you are watching on Zoom or YouTube, you may type your candle into the chat box to be held by the community watching the service with you. As our services live stream to YouTube, we cannot guarantee that your joys, concerns, sorrows, and milestones will stay within the First Parish community. If you would like to share more privately, you're always welcome to reach out to Reverend Katie, myself, or the Pastoral Care Associate of the Week, Helen Lane, for pastoral care or to share more privately. And now, if you are in the sanctuary and have a joy or concern, please come forward, light a candle, and then state your name, pronouns if you wish, and briefly describe what is on your heart.
Hello, my name is Klaus Hoyer. This is a candle in remembrance of my mother. who was born today, 92 years ago, on Black Friday proper, and passed away 2010 on May 10th. So, thank you.
My name is Laura Brown, and my mom, Aurora Brown, was in the hospital for 5 days. She had pneumonia in one lung, and she's at a rehab in Waltham now, and she's improving slowly.
We have some pre-submitted candles as well. Our next candle is a candle of sorrow from Anne McCaffrey. Her husband, Martin O'Connor, suffered a catastrophic stroke last week and died soon after. Please keep Anne and their daughter Una in your hearts. Condolence cards can be sent to their home at 107 Hoover Road in Needham. We share a candle of concern. Let me light that one. We share a candle of concern from Jan and Claire Galkowski for their good friend from UUAC in Sherborne, Don Kaiser. Oops. Don Kaiser, who slipped while walking his dog and hit his head hard, developing a concussion. Don is awaiting an appointment with a neurosurgeon. Don is really an active septuagenarian, from his early morning swims to kayaking and riding a motorcycle. He is also a retired master carpenter. Don also made the backing for the Climate Justice Now sign, which graces First Parish's front lawn. Our thoughts and wishes and love go to him and his wife Carol, and we ask you all to remember them and wish a speedy recovery. We share a candle of gratitude from Leslie Ross Degnan after her surgery. To my family for their daily care, my friends for meals and getting me outdoors to see the autumn leaves, and the caring First Parish community for checking in and sending cheerful words of healing my way. Thank you all. Our next candle is a candle of joy from Kate Loftus Camp, our former assistant music director. Kate is pleased to share that her family is growing. Kate, Rich, and Anna are all excited to welcome another little Loftus to the family in January 2022. Our next candle is a candle of joy from Carolyn and Phil Lines. Our daughter Alyssa had a baby at 6:12 a.m. on Friday, October 22nd in Western Mass. The little one's name is Quinn Murray Shanty Lines. The new dad reports that they are 8.5 pounds and 22 inches, and so sweet, big, curious seeming eyes and brown hair. We are just delighted. And our final candle this morning is a candle of joy from Carla Barbieri. Carla completed her chemotherapy for non-Hodgkin lymphoma and received the good news that she is in remission. She is both happy and relieved. Since she's immunocompromised, Carla won't be attending any indoor church events anytime soon, but hopes to see you at outdoor events. A heartfelt thanks to our wonderful community for the many expressions of support and the delicious meals and food that kept her and her family going during this time. For all the joys and sorrows that we still hold in our hearts, and for the prayers of our neighbors near and far, we light one final candle. May the peace in this sanctuary be felt too in each of your homes, as we remember that even though apart, we are still deeply connected. Amen. And let us join together now in prayer and meditation. First, I invite you here in the sanctuary, viewing from home or the parish hall, to check in with your body. For those of you volunteers who are back in the church this Sunday, what is going on in your body this morning? Where are you carrying your excitement? Where are you carrying some of your stress? And for everybody, what from this week might you be carrying around with you in your body? Please join me in taking a few deep breaths together. Find your feet planted on the floor. Below your feet is the earth. Feel connected to that. Breathe into the parts of your body carrying your stress or your hope, your excitement or your grief. And as you breathe deeply together with me, remember that these reactions and others are normal, they're okay, and they're to be expected. And so now, Spirit of life and love, God of many names, we rejoice with all of you who come today in joy. We know that in times like this, we need joy and laughter if we are to continue the work that is ours to do. Our hearts are also with those who come today with a sorrow or a fear or in tiredness or weariness. We direct our prayers toward Haiti, where a group of 17 U.S. missionaries, including children, were kidnapped by a gang last Saturday. We pray for their safe release. We also pray for all those caught up in gang violence and kidnapping cases in Haiti, cases involving native Haitians that therefore receive less media attention, while no less urgent or horrifying. Our prayers are with the loved ones of Ahmaud Arbery and the victims' families of the Parkland school shooting, whose grief and trauma will be stirred up this week as their killers go on trial. And finally, we grieve together that the death toll from the pandemic in our country alone is at 733,000 lives lost to the disease, including this week our first Black Secretary of State, Colin Powell. May we look to this loving community for resilience and hope when our own is in short supply. May we hold each other in the places that are the most tender this week. May we remember that though 6 feet separate some of us from each other, and many of us are still further away than that we are still deeply connected. May it be so. Please join me in singing from home and humming along in the sanctuary and parish hall our meditative response this morning, Circle Round for Freedom. The lyrics can be found in yesterday's emailed bell notes, your order of service, or number 155 in your gray hymnals.
Circle round for freedom, circle round for peace, for all of us imprisoned, circle for release, circle for the planet, circle for each soul, for the children of our children, keep the circle whole.
This congregation has been supported by the volunteer time and treasure of its members and friends since its founding in 1711. This is the time in our service when we ask for all of you, modern stewards of the church, to offer what you can to build and sustain the congregation and the world we envision. This month, our collections are split 50-50 with the Metrowest Worker Center. The Metrowest Worker Center is immigrant worker-led and organizes to defend and expand the labor, civil, and human rights of all workers in Greater Boston. During the pandemic, the Metrowest Worker Center has also supported Canasta Solidaria, Solidarity Basket. This program gives groceries and grocery gift cards to struggling immigrant families in Framingham and in Milford. Every 2 weeks, 450 families receive staple food items, including rice, eggs, and vegetables. Here in the sanctuary in the parish hall, you're welcome to pass cash or a check to the ushers, and I implore you to please look at the beautiful flowers that Jeanette Anderson has brought us today, our first live flowers in quite a while.
How many roads must a man walk down before you call him a man? And how many seas must a white dove sail before she sleeps in the sand? Yes, and how many times must the cannonballs fly before they're forever banned? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. Yes, and how many years can a mountain Yes, and how many years can some people exist before they're allowed to be free? Yes, and how many times can a person turn their head and pretend that they just don't see? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. Yes, and how many times must a person look up before they can see the sky? Yes, and how many years must one person have before they can hear people cry? Yes, and how many deaths will it take till they know that too many people have died? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind.
Our responsive reading comes from an 1857 speech honoring the end of slavery throughout the British Empire, delivered by 19th century Black abolitionist Frederick Douglass. Douglass described how the resistance of Caribbean slaves and the efforts of white British allies achieved freedom. For those of you at home, please pull up the responsive reading in yesterday's emailed bell notes. For those of you here in the sanctuary and worship cafe, the reading is at 579 in your gray hymnals. I will read the plain type, and you will respond with Reverend Katie reading the italicized type. Remember to keep your masks fully over your noses and mouth. Those who profess to favor freedom and yet deprecate agitation are people who want crops without plowing up the ground.
They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roar of its waves.
This struggle may be a moral one, or it may be both moral and physical, but it must be a struggle.
Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will.
Find out what people will submit to, and you have found out the exact amount of injustice which will be imposed upon them.
The limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of those whom they oppress.
In that vein, our second reading today is a video excerpt from First Parish's member of blessed memory, Ed Lane. Ed gave a series of 3 lectures at First Parish in Waltham, where he was Minister Emeritus, about the history of our national denomination's publishing house, Beacon Press. Ed was serving as chair of the Beacon Press Board in 1971 when our denomination controversially chose to publish the Pentagon Papers about the U.S. military involvement in Vietnam.
Get into our topic tonight, picking up where we left on after the first lecture with a cliffhanger of that telephone call that I got on July 19 from Goben Stair. We've got the Pentagon Papers. We think we should publish them. What do you think? And very quickly, the next day, 5 people were unanimous in their agreement that we should publish. I was one of those 5 as chair of the Beacon board. Gobin as the director of the press was another. Arnold Tovell as the editor of the press was a third. Bob West as president of the UUA was a fourth. And Ray Hopkins, vice president of the UUA, was a fifth. And that agreement was done with no dissent at all. Very quickly we agreed we should publish. At that point, I think none of us, or I should say all of us, thought that publishing classified material was a crime. And as you'll see in the lecture tonight, turned out it wasn't. We had no idea. We knew the Nixon administration would come down hard on us as they had on the New York Times and other newspapers. We did not know what they would do. But we were all aware of the fact that we could wind up being convicted of a crime. But it turned out that wasn't the case. That announcement by Senator Gravel and later by the Beacon Press resulted in a phone call at home to Goben Stair from President Nixon. I attempted without success to obtain a written transcript of that call from the Nixon library. They said it wasn't available. I don't know how people get those tapes, but tapes are available some way. But all we have is Goben's recollection as he remembers it. And what he remembers was that Nixon said, "Goben, we've been investigating you around Boston. And we know you're apparently a pretty nice and smart guy. I hear you're going to do that set of papers by that guy Gravel." And then going on to suggest that he should not do it and that he would be in trouble if he did. My greatest concern was always that we could be completely exonerated by the courts, as I eventually believed we would be, though not initially, and still be bankrupt if the government chose to pit its vast financial resources against our small denominational publishing house. I wrote a sermon, I think it was in 1973, I believe, entitled "The Mouse That Roared." You remember that movie by Peter Sellers? Because this is the way I felt. We were a tiny little publishing house taking on the federal government, and they could just beat up on us and lose every case and still clobber us.
The mouse that roared. We watched this clip just a couple of years ago, mere months before the pandemic began, as I preached a sermon about just war theory, well outside my area of expertise in all transparency, in honor of Veterans Day. I revisit that sermon and that history this morning at the 50th anniversary of Beacon Press publishing the Pentagon Papers. I didn't have enough time this week to write a short sermon, for which I apologize in advance. Now, many folks outside of our denomination don't know this story, especially after the movie The Post was released, and like the movie Selma, did not include our denomination's involvement with those key moments in American history. I told my therapist this last week that I was preaching on the Pentagon Papers and our denomination's decision to publish, and she asked, why? Wasn't that the New York Times? Yes and no. In 1967, Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara gathered a team of 36 analysts to draft a full history of the U.S. decision-making on Vietnam, beginning in the 1940s. The 7,000-page report would become known as the Pentagon Papers. The papers detailed how the United States had been secretly involved in Vietnam's affairs since the 1950s, that the CIA had helped depose Vietnam's former president, that the government was using the war in Vietnam to contain China and Soviet communism, not to liberate South Vietnam, that the government continued with the war to avoid embarrassing ourselves with a military loss, and that a succession of presidential administrations had lied to the public about these facts. All the while, we deployed nearly 3.5 million American service members to Vietnam in what the government knew was an unwinnable conflict. Euro-American economist and military analyst Daniel Ellsberg, who worked at the think tank Rand Corporation, began smuggling pieces of that report out of the company in 1969. In 1971, Ellsberg began leaking those documents to friends and contacts at various national newspapers, most famously at the New York Times and the Washington Post, as we recently saw in that star-studded movie, The Post. But the Nixon administration went after the newspapers, and for a time, none could publish the Pentagon Papers in its entirety. So Ellsberg began looking for the right congressperson to whom to leak the papers. Around the same time, Senator Mike Gravel, a Euro-American Unitarian Universalist from Alaska, he had attempted to filibuster renewal of the draft, so Ellsberg felt like he may have found the right congressperson. Another Unitarian Universalist, Armenian-American Ben Bagdikian, was the journalist at the Washington Post who'd known Ellsberg when they both worked at the Rand Corporation. Bagdikian was asked to help Ellsberg deliver the Pentagon Papers over to Senator Gravel. As Gravel recounted it later, I met Bagdikian at midnight under the marquee of the Mayflower Hotel in the heart of Washington, D.C. His car was parked, and I pulled up abreast of it. He opened my trunk, tossed the papers in the trunk, and I sped away. Gravel then read the Pentagon Papers into the public record through his chairmanship of the Senate's Building and Grounds Subcommittee. However, a fellow senator blocked funding for a Senate stenographer to type up the Pentagon Papers, and Ellsberg's plan for the papers to become publicly available was again thwarted. But Gravel and Ellsberg were committed to getting the entirety of the Pentagon Papers published. Gravel approached 36 publishers with the Pentagon Papers and was turned down by everyone, each having done a financial assessment and determining the Pentagon Papers wouldn't sell well and might result in big legal fees. Plus, the Pentagon Papers were a huge, disorganized pile of Xeroxed notes, an editorial nightmare. Then, one of Gravel's aides reminded him of his own denomination's publishing house up in Boston. Modern Euro-American lawyer and former editor Alison Trizop wrote a comprehensive history of Beacon Press and the Pentagon Papers, and I draw heavily from her work here. The Unitarian Universalist Association's Beacon Press was and is one of the oldest continuously running independent publishing houses in the United States, formally founded by the American Unitarian Association in 1854. By the time of Senator Gravel's search for a publisher, Beacon Press had already published books that condemned the United States' involvement in Vietnam by folks like Jewish American social historian Howard Zinn, as well as other controversial books earlier in the 20th century from authors like gay black activist James Baldwin, Indian spiritual and anti-colonial leader Mohandas Gandhi, and Austrian Jewish doctor and philosopher Viktor Frankl. So Gravel called Beacon Press to ask if they were interested. As we heard from our own Ed Lane in his lecture about the Pentagon Papers, Beacon Press and the UUA decided to take up that challenge to become the mouse that roared. Beacon Press director Goben Stair recalled other publishers had turned down the manuscript, both for commercial reasons and out of fear. And as a free press, we felt we had a responsibility to publish needed information when others would not. Senator Gravel told our denominational magazine, the UU World, nobody would touch the papers, nobody but the Unitarians. So that really locked me in. I'm Unitarian and I'm damn proud of it. They've got courage. I'm very loyal to the Unitarian Church for what they did. As described for the online UU historical website Harvard Square Library by modern Euro-American UU minister, Reverend Dr. Susan Ritchie, in 1971, publishing the Pentagon Papers was a huge financial risk for us because our denomination was in very bad financial shape. The UUA president at the time, Reverend Bob Wolf, was narrowly avoiding bankruptcy by cutting funding and programming. This included what is called by most UUs as the Black Empowerment Controversy, when in 1970 the UUA reneged on promised funding to Black Unitarian Universalist activists and organizers, resulting in a walkout at the National General Assembly and the departure of many Black UUs and their allies from our denomination. And Unitarian Universalist congregations were deeply divided over the Vietnam War, although publishing the Pentagon Papers was simply publishing the truth. We all know that what is true can be construed as partisan. The Veach funding program out of the Shelter Rock Unitarian Universalist congregation on Long Island loaned $100,000 to Beacon Press as working capital as they published the Pentagon Papers. Beacon Press also received smaller donations from rival publishing houses that understood the risk their competitor was taking. The 4-volume set of the Pentagon Papers, the Defense Department History of United States Decision-Making on Vietnam, the Senator Gravel edition, was released on October 22nd, 1971. $45 for the hardcover, $20 for paperback. Beacon Press is the only publisher who has ever published the complete Pentagon Papers. As expected, as we heard from Ed, the federal government came down hard on the UUA. On October 29th, 2 FBI agents appeared at the New England Merchants National Bank, where our national denomination and Beacon Press had their accounts. With a grand jury blanket subpoena, the agents asked for all UUA records, copies of every check written and every check deposited by the UUA between June 1st and October 15th of that year, which essentially gave them the name and address of every Unitarian Universalist in the country. As we heard from Ed Lane, President Nixon phoned the director of Beacon Press personally. As Reverend Dr. Ritchie wrote, Bob West describes in his memoir that 2 agents from the Defense Department visited Beacon Press director Goben Starr at his office, an experience Goben described as ominous and intimidating. In addition to those personal threatening calls and visits, at Ed Lane's own church in Westport, Connecticut, his office was tapped by the FBI. An enormous file was collected on him. Then there were court cases and grand jury trials against Senator Gravel, Daniel Ellsberg, and Beacon Press. Our denomination's legal fees were astonishing, as Ed feared. Ritchie wrote, the UUA responded with a suit in federal court arguing that such broad access and investigation subject our denomination to governmental intimidation and harassment, represses legitimate dissent, and infringes upon the religious freedom and freedom of the press guaranteed by the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. West described the intent and effect of the harassment. As I traveled and spoke, many people asked me, if I buy a copy of the Pentagon Papers, am I subject to investigation? Will a file be opened on me? I can draw no other conclusion than that the overall intent of the investigation was to create fear, have a chilling effect on our denomination, other religious organizations, and people who might be inclined to engage in dissent from stated policy. And as expected, we were not making much money from our 4-volume published set of the Pentagon Papers. The epigraph of Alison Trizop's history was penned by Ed Lane. He wrote, "It's tragic when a nation dedicated and committed to the principle of freedom reaches such a point that the greatest fear we have is from the government itself." The government may have continued its campaign against our denomination if the executive branch didn't end up with something else to worry about that summer of 1972. The break-in at the Watergate Hotel. U.S. forces withdrew from Vietnam in 1973, and President Nixon resigned in 1974, just prior to his likely removal from office. Without major financial contributions from the UU congregation at Shelter Rock on Long Island, from wealthy Euro-American lawyer and business person Jonathan Holdeen, and from individual UUs and UU congregations feeling united against the federal government, our denomination may have collapsed. There's much to learn from and be inspired by in this story, but there are 3 aspects ringing particularly loudly for me. First, I honor the memory of our member of blessed memory, Ed Lane, and our other spiritual ancestors for their bravery and commitment to the truth. Second, I remember the aphorism that those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. As quoted by Euro-American journalist David Shribner in a Globe article this past summer, Daniel Ellsberg said, the Pentagon Papers foreshadowed Iraq and Afghanistan and that they showed presidents' ability to keep secrets, the exact thing we saw in Vietnam. There are no big Afghanistan or Iraq papers, but they would show the same kind of thing. Progress in those wars was a lie. There was no progress that was going to happen, and leaders told themselves that they didn't have to tell it to the public? Can we remember to demand transparency and justice from our own government? Can we remember what our reading this morning from Frederick Douglass told us, that power concedes nothing without a demand? It never did, and it never will. Can we remember how to most effectively make those demands through community organizing and direct political pressure and civil disobedience? Third, I remember this great little board book I got for my daughter Sophia, the sequel to A is for Activist, a radical alphabet book gifted to her from our First Parish staff team. It's called Counting on Community, a numbers book that features things like 3 urban farmers knee-deep in the mud and 8 picket signs showing that we care. The last page asks, what can you count on in your community? I can count on you, and you can count on me. Beacon Press's story of publishing the Pentagon Papers reminds me that though we are challenged to take risks for our values, we rely on each other as a safety net to catch us if we fall, to bail us out of jail if we're arrested at a pipeline protest, to show up with a meal, a listening ear, a loving heart when we are hurt or our cabinets are bare, to take over the struggle when we need to rest. I remember that I can count on you and that you can count on me. I recognize that remembering to take risks for our values may seem like a strange choice for a Sunday when we have a test run of hybrid multi-platform worship. Some first parishioners may think we're taking too big a risk to gather indoors, in person, and some will think we have been too cautious, and perhaps that we're still being too cautious with our various restrictions. And it is always a risk, even if just a small one, to gather indoors during this pandemic. But we value community. We also took a risk of our community falling apart, staying online until we felt confident we could gather more safely. But we value public health and the life of each of our community members and neighbors. Our UU values demand we honor science and the inherent worth and dignity of every person, which is why we are committed to following scientifically grounded protocols, neither being fearful nor cavalier, and why we will continue with online connections, not leaving any community member behind during this transitional time. Whatever reactions bubble up, we strive to come back to our values and let our ethics guide our words and deeds, with those ethics and values grounded in a commitment to truth, compassion, and respect, to peace, justice, and love. I hope that each of us will remember our ethical commitments as we move ahead as a faith community that can count on each other into a challenging decade of the waning pandemic, of ongoing personal and institutional violence and oppression, and the worsening climate crisis. We may not be the largest church in Boston Metrowest or the largest denomination in our nation, but even a mouse can roar and make a difference. May we remember. Blessed be, and amen.
Dona nobis
As we close our worship today, remember that all are invited to our social hour on Zoom or in the parish hall. Remember for social hour in the parish hall that you must keep your mask on over your nose and mouth, and that you should not converse in the hallway between the sanctuary and parish hall, as that space is not ventilated. Keep a careful eye out for emails from First Parish and follow us on social media so that you can keep up with opportunities for connection for all ages throughout the week and with updates on our reopening and COVID-19 precautions. You can sign up for our weekly email, The Bell Notes, by clicking on Subscribe to Newsletter on our website, uuneedham.org. Coming up this week at First Parish, we will be holding the memorial service for Dick Anthony this Saturday, October 30th at 2 p.m., both in person and online, with a reception afterward at Masala Art. Do keep a close eye on your email for information about whether next Sunday, October 31st, will be our first hybrid service. Either way, that Sunday, you are invited to wear a Halloween costume to church, and we will be building an All Souls Remembrance Altar for those who have died since All Souls 2020. So check out the Bell Notes for how to participate. What's more, there will be an all-ages Halloween RE party at 1 p.m. after the service. Join First Parish throughout the week on Zoom at the Lane Lyceum on Tuesday night, lunch bunch with the ministers on Wednesday, Writing Escapes, Action Book Club, or Vespers on Thursday, or Creative Escapes, or the weekly Climate Vigil on Friday. And don't forget about the blood drive coming up this Friday. You can find more information about all of these programs in our Bell Notes. Please remember, if you fall ill or need any pastoral support, to reach out to me, Reverend Katie, and the pastoral care team and caring crew via phone or email. And to reach out to our office administrator, Susanna Whitman, if you have trouble signing up for the Bell Notes or logging into Eventbrite. We always extinguish our chalice with words promising to carry its flame in our hearts until we are together again, no matter how long it is until we are all together again. Please join me from home or here in the building in saying those words written by Unitarian Universalist minister Reverend Elizabeth Selly Jones. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Our closing hymn, The Fire of Commitment, was co-written by modern Euro-American UU minister Reverend Mary Catherine Morn, while serving the First UU Church in Nashville in honor of the congregation's 50th anniversary in 2002. From home, please pull up the lyrics from yesterday's Bell Notes. From the sanctuary and parish hall, you can find the lyrics in your order of service or number 1028 in your teal hymnal. Please join in singing from home or humming along in the sanctuary and parish hall our closing hymn, The Fire of Commitment.
When the From the stories of our living rings a song both brave and free, calling pilgrims still to witness to the life of liberty. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the dreams of youthful vision comes a new prophetic voice, which demands a deeper justice built by our courageous choice. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin.
As we close our worship today, please take these words from Euro-American UU minister Reverend Wayne Arneson with you as a benediction. Take courage, friends. The way is often hard, the path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down there is another truth. We are not alone. Our service begins when our service ends. I hope to see you soon. Blessed be, and amen.